Alright, hello everyone and welcome to another video tutorial. In this one, I will not be cleaning and restoring a game console, but rather I will be replacing a relatively important part in a console. I will be replacing the 72-pin connector in an original front-loader NES. It's a very simple procedure. You don't need any fancy tools or anything, so almost anyone can do it if they trust themselves enough. I did it on my first NES, and I was probably like 12 when I did it, maybe 13. So it's not that hard of a thing to do. So without further ado, I'm just going to show you how to do it and what you need. First of all, obviously you're going to need your NES that you are replacing the 72-pin connector in. You're going to need a new 72-pin connector, and I'm doing this for my friend, this isn't mine, but he got this one from Culsum's Original NES store. If you can see the label right there, C-U-L-S-M-A-S, Original NES store. And I'm sure they wouldn't mind a little advertising. So their website is www.culsumsoriginalnesstore.com, and their phone number is 304-895-3405. So I'm hoping this is a good, reliable place because I've never been there. But so I'm just going to open the box here and show you what the 72-pin connector is if you did not know what they are already. So they look like this. And this is essentially the piece that reads the game, the pins on the game. And they wear out over time, and they're not the best pieces in the world, but that's why we're replacing one. So if you have your 72-pin connector and you have an NES, sorry, not a Super Nintendo, all you're going to need is a Phillips head screwdriver, just like this one. Now I have two because this one's magnetized and it can't reach the holes on the bottom of the NES. So you can see here, some of these holes go pretty deep, like this screw hole right here, so that's why I have this screwdriver. So without further ado, let's get right into how to replace this. So we are going to have to take the thing apart, but don't worry, we're not doing anything drastic or horrifying that'll tear the whole thing to shreds. So the first thing you're going to do is on all four corners and in the middle on the bottom, there is a total of 6 Phillips head screws. So the first step you're going to have to do is take all 6 screws out. Alright, once all 6 screws have been taken out, the next thing you're going to want to do is flip the console carefully back over. Make sure you're holding the lid and the top together because they're not connected anymore. Or sorry, the lid and the bottom. Now once it's flipped over, this whole beige piece right here will just lift right off with very little effort, as you can see here. And this one, as you can tell, the inside's very clean because it's already been cleaned. If yours has not been cleaned, I did a tutorial on how to take apart, clean, and restore one of these old consoles, so I'll leave a link to the video in the description of this video below. So you can go ahead and check that out if yours is dirty and you just don't want it to be dirty anymore. And I also go into a lot more detail about how to take one of these apart completely to get everything cleaned, because I'm only taking it about halfway apart here. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to have what's known as RF shielding here, and this is the next piece we're going to have to remove. So it kind of sucks, there's a lot of screws for it. There's, on the side here, there's 1, 2, and then there's a third one in there. And along the back, you have 4 and 5. And over this side, you have 6 and 7. So you're going to have to go ahead and take all 7 of those screws out. So now I've gone ahead and taken all 7 of those screws out, and this piece of RF shielding, or just metal if you want to call it that, should just lift right out. And it might get caught right here because this corner right here is actually under this metal part that sticks up, so you're going to have to kind of twist it around. But once you get that up, you can just lift that right out. So now you're looking at this, hopefully, because you shouldn't be looking at anything else. So this is the next piece we want to take out right here. This is the actual cartridge slot where if you were to take a game cartridge, it'd slide in right here, line up right here. This is the part we need to take out. And then you press it down like this and it'd click down like that. So what we need to do is take this whole mechanism out. So there's 3 screws along this side and 3 screws along this side. Now the screw that's right here, you have 2 screws that are really close together. The one in the middle-ish right here, and the same on the other side right here. They're going to be longer. Sometimes they're silver, but in this case they're not. They're all gold. Well, not really gold, but they're gold plated. So this screw and this screw, you're going to have to remove. And I forgot my train of thought for a second. You're going to have to remove them and just make sure you realize that they're longer. And also they're not gold plated, they're brass screws. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws that you have to take out that's holding this whole mechanism together. Alright, so all the screws are out. Now taking this piece out kind of sucks because you have to slide it off the 72-pin connector. So what you have to do is kind of push it that way and lift up at the same time. So you have to push it and lift up. And it's kind of difficult, but it will come off relatively easily. So now you got the whole cartridge tray mechanism out of there. And so now here is your 72-pin connector. As you can see, this one's all worn out looking on the top. And here's the new one that we're going to be putting in. Looks nice and shiny, and all the pins are all clean and brand new. So sadly, we do have to take out 2 more screws to get this off, but it's not that bad compared to before. You have 1 screw way down in there that you have to get, and 1 over here that you have to take out. And I'm just going to take these 2 out on camera real quick because I'm going to say something. You can skip this if you really want to. So these, the 72 pin connector, it's just connected to the motherboard like how you would connect a cartridge into a console. It's basically just shoved on there, and the only thing holding it on there is how tightly it's pinched onto it. It sounds stupid, but apparently it works because these things have been around for how long now? But although it is a stupid design sometimes, it does work. And so removing it is easy. So I got the 2 screws out, but I couldn't pull them out, so I'm probably going to have to like turn this upside down. So now this whole board and the piece of metal under it will lift out like this. So let me get these 2 screws out of here real quick, if I can. All right, there's 1. And there is almost 2. There's 2. Okay, so now this has been removed. Let me turn it around so it's easy for you guys to see. Here's the 72 pin connector. Again, here's the new one, just to show you the difference. There's not much of a difference. But as you can see, this piece of metal is still in the way, so we're going to have to let that kind of fall off like that. Sometimes it gets caught around these wires, but in this case it didn't. So now you have your 72 pin connector completely exposed. It's still connected to the motherboard, however. And so quite literally, all you have to do is grab it and pull it off. It'll come off. It's very hard to get off because of how tightly they are on there. But I would not suggest going like this and pulling one side and then the other side, because that'll tend to bend the pins and it might mess up the pins on the motherboard that they line up with. So what I would do, what I usually do, is grab it like this and push with your thumbs, and it'll come off evenly on both sides. And it's very tight, and it will fly off like that. Don't worry, you didn't break it. So here's the old 72 pin connector that we no longer need. And here's the new one. They look the same, they are the same, except this one's new and clean. So before you put it on, I would suggest getting like a Q-tip or something and wiping around on these pins. Just dry, emphasis on dry Q-tip, just to get all the dirt and dust off of it so that it has a nice connection. I don't have any Q-tips on me, so I'm just lightly dusting it off with my finger. You might be able to see how dirty that was. Not sure. So now we're going to reverse exactly what we just did. Now here's the new 72 pin connector, and you want to shove it onto the mother. You want to shove these pins into this slot right here, the one that lines up with the plastic tabs. Alright, sorry about that random cut there. Something happened that I had to stop recording. So, the connectors on your board are all cleaned off, and you have your new pin connector. And like I said, you want to put it in this slot right here. Not this, well, it won't go on this one. This is the one where the game goes in that you'd read it. So you're going to take your pin connector, put it, line it up, and try to space it so it's even on both ends so that the pins line up with these metal connectors on the board. And then all you quite literally do is just shove it back on like that. And you're good. So now all you have to do is basically reverse all the steps you did earlier and put the console back together. So now you gotta line this piece of metal back up, and this part usually takes me just under a half hour because it never wants to go in the correct way. Alright, once that is in, now you have a bunch of brass screws that look like this, and you're going to put 2 of them down in here. Alright, once those 2 screws are put back into place, make sure over here you have a little plastic tab that sticks up. Make sure it's lined up through the metal as it is here. And there's one over here as well. And there is one on the back, but that's for the second piece of metal. So the next piece you want to put on is the cartridge slot. Now, as you remember, you had to kind of slide it and put it on, or to take it off, and that's exactly what you have to do now. You have to start over here and kind of slide it backwards. It takes a little bit of forcing to get on. It really does suck. Especially at this angle, I'm kind of doing it backwards from when I normally do it. Alright, there we go. Jesus, that took more than it should have, honestly. Alright, so now if you remember, there's 2 screws back here, or 4 screws back here, and then 2 up front. Now, there's a couple things I want to note here. As you remember, this screw that goes right in this hole, and the one in this hole should be the 2 longer screws you have. They should be the only 2 screws that are longer out of this whole thing. And another thing I want to note is that the 2 screws that go in the very back right here, so the new 72 pin connectors won't have screw like threads on them, so it will go in, but it won't feel like it's holding anything because it'll just keep spinning. But believe me, it's holding, it's fine. And lastly, just this one screw up here, you have to put in a little more loose than normal, because if you put it in too tight, it won't lock down like this because it starts to bend the plastic out a little bit from being pulled on both directions. So you want to put it in really loose, and once it's put in, make sure that you still can do this and that it clicks down, because if you put it in too tight, it'll go down and it'll just come back up like this and won't click down, and that's not what you want. Alright, so right now I over-tightened the screw just to show you guys what I mean. If I push this down, it doesn't lock back into place. So what you want to do is loosen this screw and continue to loosen it until it locks down again. I'm going to make it even a little bit looser because there are other screws we need to worry about too. So once that's down, I'll make it a little bit tighter just so it's not wiggling around in the console. Again, make sure it's, just always make sure it's as tight as possible. Or it says, they always make sure that this happens. You don't want it to not, I mean, it will work if it doesn't do that, but you still would want it to be fully functional. So next thing you're going to do is grab the second piece of metal you have, and this should be the only other metal piece that you have. And we're going to drop it back into place over the cartridge slot like so. And this one takes a little bit of finagling and it doesn't fit quite perfectly, but that's why they put plastic tabs on. So as you remember, there's a plastic tab here that will go through, a plastic tab in the back right there that'll go through, and there's also one over here right next to the screw hole that goes through, and one right there. So you got to make sure those are all lined up so that the metal is down as far as it can be, just for the correctness of the console, and make sure it's put in right. So now you got to put in your screws. So there's 7 screws for this thing, so that's a lot. There's 2 over here, there's 2 in the back, then there's 1 right there, and then 2 over here. And as I was saying before, any screws that are around the middle of the console are the ones that you don't want to tighten. Like this one over here, we didn't want to tighten too much, if you can see. So this one, you don't want to tighten too much either. And I'll show you again whenever we come back. But so go ahead and put all 7 screws in. Alright, I've gone ahead and put all those screws back into the console, as you can see here. And so lastly, you should have 6 screws left, because all you have to do is put the lid back on the console, and then you're done. Just at this point, double check that yours still does this. If it's not staying down, or if it's like barely staying down, which sometimes will happen, loosen this screw and this screw. You want to do the ones that are around the front of this towards the middle. But once that is done, you can take the lid of your console and drop it back on. Since it's just a rectangle, it should fit like perfect. Turn it over, and we're going to put the 6 screws back in. Now, again, there's one thing that we should note about this console, and that is the front. We don't want the thing to not spring down like I've been saying the entire video. So this screw, don't over tighten. Actually, leave it as loose as you can, but still holding the console together. These back ones and these 2, I would make as tight as you can, because if you took it apart, you're probably not taking it apart anytime soon. But so these 5, tighten as much as possible. This one, don't tighten a lot, because then you'll do the exact same thing. You'll make it so that the cartridge slot doesn't stay down, and it will not work as well. So go ahead and put all 6 screws in with the restrictions I just told you, and you should be good to go. Alright, I put all 6 screws back into the bottom of this thing, so we are all done. As you can see, it does not click down. So what does that mean? It means that I tightened this screw too much, and maybe other ones on the front, but it's most likely that this one is the culprit. So we'll loosen her a bit. Now we check. If it's still no, it's the other screws. It's still no. So basically, if you're having that issue, just go around all the screws and loosen them a little bit until it works. And it will take, maybe it'll take all 6 screws usually. Or not usually, but maybe. There are cases where it'll take all 6 screws. I've only had that happen like once out of probably 10 NESs that I've done. But so we are done here. Oh, sorry about that. That was an awful noise. The 72-pin connector is in. The old one is out, and here it is. I'm going to put it back in the box because I don't know what my friend wants me to do with these old ones. But so yeah, that is it for this video. I hope it was helpful. That was the most step-by-step video of how to remove and replace an NES 72-pin connector that you'll find on YouTube. If you find a better one, please let me know, because I'd be happy to watch it too and give those people a like, because they have the same hobbies and interests for these classic consoles that I do. So, without further ado, this is the end of the video. So, thank you for watching, everyone, and please leave a like or a subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks.